Hey guys, Steve Ellis here from Holding Vigo County Accountable, and tonight's guest, we're going to have two tonight, but first guest tonight is Dan Kelly. Dan Kelly is running for Judge Division 6 on the Republican ballot.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history and background, and what's caused you to run for this position.
Sure, thank you, Steve. And it's great to be here with you guys this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your viewers. I know that, well, first of all, as far as my background is concerned, I come from Terre Haute. I was born here and raised here and have lived my entire adult life here. I've got a family here, and I've got a large family, and I'm from a large family. And I've practiced law for 36 years. I was in active practice for 22 years, but then I've been on the bench for 14 years up to this point. I've had quite a bit of experience in courtrooms. All of my practice has been devoted to trial practice. When I was in private practice, I was in a general practice, but we did litigation of various sorts, from family law to contract to torts. And so the civil practice that I had was pretty much always in the courtroom. I was not a desk or office attorney at any point.
So for people that don't understand what civil means, basically when you say civil, you mean non-criminal cases.
Lawsuits and things.
Between individuals, not necessarily between the state and an individual.
Correct, okay. Correct. And so in addition to that, I also did like a lot of tort cases and breach of contract and real estate disputes, just really the gamut. In my practice, I was in multiple firms, and I also practiced on my own for a number of years in a solo practice.
Did you do something with the prosecutor's office? Did I read that somewhere?
Yes, so I also had substantial criminal experience prior to taking the bench. I was a deputy prosecutor for 3 consecutive prosecutors, and I tried a number of cases before judges and juries over the years. And then now, since 2010, I've been the Vigo County Juvenile Magistrate.
Okay.
And happy to talk to you about that, because I was thinking on the way over here about this program about holding Vigo County accountable, and I was kind of anxious to talk to you about that.
Sure.
So just for the viewers who do not know, I'm the juvenile court magistrate, and so the juvenile court handles basically 3 types of cases. We handle the county's child in need of services cases, the DCS cases. We handle all the juvenile delinquency cases, and we handle all the juvenile paternity cases. If people have had children out of wedlock and they have disputes over custody or visitation or support, we preside over all of those, and I've done that since 2010. We also have, if the child need of services cases do not result in reunification of a child who's been removed by DCS with a parent, a last resort option, unfortunately, is termination of parental rights, and I preside over all of those. Those are often called the death penalty of civil law because it's such an important matter. They're almost always reviewed by the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
So I have quite a bit of experience in dealing with those, unfortunately.
Probably very emotional, I would have to imagine.
They're the toughest thing I do.
Right.
There's no question about it. But the reason I brought up about holding Vigo County accountable, as you may know, I went with Judge Newton over to the State House last month because we were trying to get the legislature to give Vigo County an additional judicial officer. And last year or 2 years ago, we were number 1 in terms of need based on the state's weighted caseload measures. I think this year we're 2nd, 3rd, but they're very close. And so we made our presentation, and I was explaining about the volume that I've seen in Vigo County, the increase since 2010. My first year, Steve, we had, I think, 104 child in need of services cases filed by DCS, which again is just part of our docket. By this year, we are on track to have over 500 of those cases filed. Chief Justice Loretta Rush, who I've known for a long time, she appointed me to the Indiana Juvenile Justice Improvement Committee that I've served on for the last few years. She was present during that hearing in the legislature, and she came up to me afterwards and explained that with the numbers that I'm talking about, Vigo County currently is on track to have 20% of the entire state's child need of services cases filed in 2024.
It's a horrible statistic.
Yeah, it is.
Hate to hear that. So obviously getting another judge assigned to our county would be huge. Obviously, I would assume would help with our caseload in general to spread everything out a little more.
Yes.
So I'm going to take this just a moment here, since we're paused, to ask you, the viewers, please hit your share button. That's how we get these videos out there. Maybe tag a few people that you think might be interested. Also, don't hesitate to ask some questions. And Mr. Kelly, I'm sure will be happy to answer those. I think you monitor Facebook a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Especially in campaign season.
All right. So you've been prosecutor. You've been magistrate, judge. You've done several roles, certainly private practice. What one of the questions I asked your opponent was where he stood relative to, and I only asked this question. I don't know that it's a fair question to ask either of you, and I don't know if it's even pertinent. But I do know that a lot of people know who I am and would expect me to ask the question of a judge as to where they stand with the Second Amendment. So if that's something you're comfortable answering, don't feel that you have to, but if it's something you're comfortable answering, feel free to.
Sure. Well, let me, if I may, back up a little bit to put it in my answer in context. I went into law because I, at a very early age, became a very big fan of the United States Constitution. I think it was the first constitution in the world that was based upon the people being sovereign and on people having God-given inalienable rights. I think the whole structure of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was intended to preserve liberty. And so I take that very seriously. It's, like I said, it's really the reason I became an attorney. That's what attracted me to law. And so I have great respect for not just the Second Amendment, but for all of the amendments. And I'm very conscious of, you know, the need for the judiciary to do its part in enforcing those liberties from government encroachment and intrusion. I don't know how much I would have a role to play in that regard on Second Amendment issues, but I think just in any area of individual liberty, I can say without hesitation that I'm in favor of defending those.
Okay. Is there anything else that we should know about you, or is there anything else that you think that we should know about you as pertains to your candidacy?
Sure. So another aspect on the accountability, because I've been the juvenile magistrate since 2010, I think that I have a record that anybody that asks around that doesn't know will tell you that I am a very hard worker. Not only because I have to be to manage that docket, which I think is in the top 3 busiest courts in the state of Indiana and has been for the last several years, but I feel like taxpayers deserve to make sure their people are working. And so I take that seriously. I usually get in early. I often stay later, come back. I know Judge Sarah Mulliken and I both worked throughout COVID. A lot of the courts throughout the state were closed. We continued to work. I worked every day other than maybe those few days. I can't remember if when they said flatten the curve those first 2 weeks, we might have been out those 2 weeks. But many other courts around the state and around the nation were closed for months. Mm-hmm. I was not.
Okay.
And I checked this because when I was testifying before the legislature about the need for a judicial officer, one of the representatives felt that judges had a tendency to take a lot of vacation and sick days. And so I went back and counted, and I think in the 14 years I've been juvenile magistrate, I've taken 6 sick days. And obviously that's partly because I've been blessed with good health and hope that continues.
Yeah.
But I do take the work for Vigo County citizens very seriously.
So I normally don't bring personal topics up in these conversations, but I heard a rumor, and I'm just wanting to see how true it is. I have heard through the grapevine that you can do a pretty long plank. Is there truth to this?
Well, not as long as I did a few years ago. Yeah,
What's your record?
40 minutes. I've done 40-minute planks.
40-minute plank.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I was proud about is they have that corporate Olympics, or the thing where they raise money for the kids at the Camp Navigate. It's an annual thing, and my kids have roped me into doing that the last few years. Although I've sworn off ever doing one of the tug of wars again. I'm too old for that. That was thoroughly exhausting. But they did have a plank competition, and this year I did win that. with a 19.5-minute plank.
Wow.
So, the shoulders don't last quite as long as they did, a few years ago when I did
That's
the real
crazy.
ones.
I'm sitting here. It's funny. As with all of the interviews, as I sit here, the whole time I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about the young lady that's holding the camera and how tired their arms get. And they've told me at the end, "Hey, could you make them shorter? My arms are getting tired." I just can't imagine doing a plank for 40 minutes. That's crazy.
I probably couldn't hold that camera for 40 minutes. She's doing a fine job, though.
All right. So if you have any questions for Judge Dan Kelly, don't hesitate to post them down below, and I'm sure he'll monitor and get you some answers. If not, I'll try to also stay on top of them. Please hit your share button. Please tag some people. That's how we get these messages out there, and people can get to know our candidates a little bit better.
I do have something else I could let the listeners know about. A lot of times there's a backlog in courts, and that's one of the complaints that litigants have and lawyers have. And I know that in the federal system, I had a number of cases in the federal courts in my practice before I became a juvenile magistrate, and they often would use in the federal system the pretrial conferences, not only to schedule trial dates and other discovery deadlines, but the judges and magistrates in the federal system often act as mediators to try really aggressively to bring parties together to settle cases. I am a trained mediator as well. I'm a registered civil mediator in the state of Indiana. I did that prior to taking the bench. And so I would look forward to the opportunity to use some of those skills to kind of move cases, both in the civil arena and I think in the criminal as well.
It is an issue. I know with every court, not just Division 6, every court, they've got this massive backlog, and that's why everyone's taken so long to get these cases through. The
criminal docket, I know it's a great frustration because we have a situation where we have jail overcrowding and everybody's looking for someone to blame. I think the problem is we have too many people right now who are committing crimes and there's nowhere to put them all. I think the county has really worked hard to look to alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent people, especially people that are mainly substance abusers. We have the drug court, we have the family recovery court for Chin's cases Judge Mulliken presides over. I started the Vigo County Juvenile Drug Court for youthful substance abusers, and it was just the third in the state to become certified by the state. One of the things I'd like to do if I do win this election and get into Division 6 is it has historically been the mental health court, and I have gone through the process and taken a court through the state process to get a problem-solving court certified. I certainly know how to do it, and I could do it again, I think, without any great difficulty.
Nice. Okay.
I also have talked to the police about the jail overcrowding problem and their frustration. I've got a son-in-law who's a police officer, and he's expressed to me the frustration that police face when they lock somebody up and they're released quickly, even though they think they're dangerous and keep committing crimes. And I know that the problem is the jail overcrowding. There's the federal lawsuit and so forth. One of the problems I've found is that the Department of Corrections, there's a lag time between the time when a defendant has been convicted and sentenced to the Department of Corrections and the time when they're actually picked up and taken to the Department of Corrections. So I think on a given day, there may be 15 to 20% of the total jail population's already been sentenced.
Yeah.
And if that transfer to the Department of Corrections could be expedited, that would make room for some of these people that really maybe should be kept longer to keep the community safe.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought of that.
I talked to Lance Sanders from the police union about that, and he and I were exploring what the problems for that could be, and he had some contacts in the Department of Correction that thinks it may be as simple as a software issue.
Okay.
So I want to explore that further and try and get to the bottom of that, because obviously the jail overcrowding is a significant problem.
Definitely an issue, right? Yeah. Well, once again, if you have any questions for Dan Kelly, don't hesitate to post them down below. Again, I always ask that you hit your share button, tag a few friends. We always appreciate that. We have another interview here shortly, and then we'll have another interview tomorrow as well. So we look forward to doing those interviews and look forward to hearing some questions from you guys. As always, take care. We thank you for watching.
Thank you.